Ladies and gentlemen, I am back with another ranking video, and today we are going to be ranking every single team in the NBA as they stand right now. So this is not a historical ranking. This is just who are the best franchises in the NBA. As you can see, we are on tier maker right now. We got all 30 teams. Hopefully, I do have all 30 teams. That's going to be really embarrassing if I don't. But we got all 30 teams. We got, 5 tiers. We're doing this in one take. I don't have all the rankings in my head coming into this video. But before we get into that, what's up, everybody? How is everyone doing? Welcome back to another video on the channel hosted by your boy B Souls, man. If everything goes to plan, this video should go out on Sunday. And if you guys didn't know, we actually started live streaming the Let's Keep It a Buck podcast on my Twitch at twitch.tv/bsouls_. I'm also planning on streaming 2K as well. You know what I'm saying? Next generation is out. You know what I'm saying? New content creators, and I'm trying to get in the 2K game. So go ahead and check the description for that. Damn, I just noticed I'm rocking the same windscreen from the last video. But leave a comment in the comment section down below what color y'all want to see next. Like the video for more videos like this. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It takes 2 seconds. It helps me out a lot. You know what I'm saying? The NBA season is going to start in a month. There's a new generation of consoles, a new 2K. In NBA terms, this is our New Year's. You know what I'm saying? So go ahead and support the channel. But let's cut to the chase, man. Let's go ahead and start this ranking video. All right, man, let's just start off with the Denver Nuggets. And I feel like the Denver Nuggets, I would put them at A tier. I would put them at A tier because they have done a tremendous job the last 2 years in drafting and getting pieces and just general development. In 2019, they had one of the best records in the Western Conference, and this year they made it to the Western Conference Finals and beat the Los Angeles Clippers, who many people had making the finals. And honestly, as it stands right now, let's move them up to S tier. Let's move them up to S tier. And I'm just looking at the board and I'm thinking to myself, what is an S tier team? And I feel like the Denver Nuggets do qualify and fit that criteria for me. So let's go ahead and put the Denver Nuggets at S. Next up, we got the Houston Rockets. Now, the Houston Rockets this decade has been one of the most consistent franchises in the league, especially the last couple of years. They have made tremendous acquisitions, and they're one of, if not the boldest team in the league in terms of committing to crazy ideas and crazy concepts. You know, putting Robert Covington at the 5. James Harden himself is a revolutionary of this game. However, with that consistency, they still haven't made the NBA Finals once. But again, I feel like of the 2010s, they're like the Utah Jazz of this thing without the finals appearance. Year in and year out, you can count on them on being a good team, but when it comes to winning the whole thing, there's a lot of doubts when it comes to this team. So I'm gonna put them at S tier just for their consistency. And even when we're talking about just this year alone, they're a solid franchise. They're still one of the best franchises in the league. Now, the Memphis Grizzlies, obviously, they weren't as good as what they were in 2014, 2015. But I believe when it comes to rebuilding a team and transitioning from one era of basketball to another, the Memphis Grizzlies have done a tremendous job, a great job at least, of doing that. When they started their rebuild, they committed to it. You know what I'm saying? They traded away Mike Conley. They weren't too attached to Zach Randolph. They weren't too attached to Marc Gasol. Although they do give them their respects, and it's not like they disrespected those players. They have a great young duo in Jaren Jackson and John Morant. They got players like Dylan Brooks on their team as well. And while I'm not expecting greatness from this team in the next 2 years, if I'm being honest, they're still a good franchise. So I'm gonna give them a B. I'm gonna give them a B franchise. They're a B franchise in this league. Now, the Milwaukee Bucks, prior to like the last 3 years, they have been like a laughingstock of this league, or at least they weren't really respected enough to be a contender. But the last 2 years, with Mike Budenholzer at the helm and the moves that they've made and how Giannis has developed, they have become one of the best franchises in the league. They've won 60 games the last 2 seasons. Now again, like the Houston Rockets, they haven't made it to the NBA Finals. They haven't gotten over that hump, but nonetheless, they're still one of the best franchises in the league. And while they have made some roster moves that are questionable, Exhibit A, how they let go Malcolm Brogdon. It's not like they're the only one. Like the Houston Rockets gave up Chris Paul for Russell Westbrook. Correct me if I'm wrong, but off the top of my head, didn't the Denver Nuggets pass up on Donovan Mitchell? Or they drafted him and then traded him? Like, stuff like this happens, you know what I'm saying? But in terms of consistency and being a competent franchise, the Milwaukee Bucks have been one of the best, at least the past 2 years. So I'm gonna give them an S tier. I'm gonna give them an S tier. The Minnesota Timberwolves, this is going straight to D. This is going straight to D. Pause. Y'all have had one of the most talented bigs in the league in Karl Anthony Towns. Y'all drafted Andrew Wiggins with the #1 overall pick, and while I do hold Andrew Wiggins accountable for majority of his flaws, the Minnesota Timberwolves as a franchise also has to be held accountable as well for how they developed Andrew Wiggins. They had Jimmy Butler on their team. They had a year where they had Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins on their team, and they made the playoffs for the first time in a long time, but they didn't really do much with it after, and Jimmy Butler left shortly after. And one of my biggest pet peeves in the NBA is when franchises essentially just waste a great player's career and aren't capable of building around them properly. And the Minnesota Timberwolves are doing that with Karl Anthony Towns. So y'all are D tier. And speaking of another easy D tier, the worst franchise in the league, in my opinion, the New York Knicks. Every year they give their fans false hope. Management is terrible. They're not good at drafting. They actually drafted a good player in Kristaps Porzingis and traded him away, and now they essentially have nothing. They tanked for Zion. They freed up 2 max slots and didn't get Zion or a max free agent, and just ended up getting like Julius Randle and a couple of other players. It's just the incompetence with this team is oozing. And they just fail to realize that being a good franchise in the league is more than just getting the #1 overall pick. It starts with management. It starts with the culture being there. And they just don't have that. They have terrible management. So they're a D tier franchise. Next up, we got the Indiana Pacers. Now, the Indiana Pacers, the last 2 years, especially with Victor Oladipo being injured, have really overachieved their expectations by a lot. And they've done a great job of developing and getting the most out of their players, right? And maybe it's just a series of unfortunate events, but since that Paul George, Roy Hibbert, David West era Pacers have gone by, they just haven't been a contending team really in the East. They're a playoff team and they overachieve most years, but they haven't been taken too serious. But the fact that, you know, they've made the most out of what they have, I would say they're a B. They're a B franchise, borderline A. The Utah Jazz, to me, they're one of the most underrated franchises in the league because they're really building this team around 2 players who were late lottery picks, and I believe Rudy Gobert was a late first round pick. And they have been a perennial 50-win team in the Western Conference, a perennial playoff team in the Western Conference the past couple of years. And while it looks like the Mike Conley transaction wasn't as good as they expected, the fact that they were still able to pull off that trade when they did was still a great acquisition. They low-key revitalized Ricky Rubio's career. They have a great coach in Quinn Snyder. I would honestly say that this is the first A team. This is the first A team on this list. The Charlotte Hornets, I'm gonna have to put y'all in the D tier. Okay, look, one of my biggest pet peeves in the league, like I already said, one of them is a franchise wasting a player's career, but another one is a franchise just being a perennial 10 seed. I hate that because you're not contending for anything, but you're not even getting a good draft pick in the draft. You're just there. You know what I'm saying? You're just there. They're not really good at trading. They're not really good at drafting. They don't really have a culture in place. They're not a good franchise right now. So the Charlotte Hornets, y'all are a D tier team. The Atlanta Hawks, look, this might be a hot take. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt because, like the Memphis Grizzlies, once they moved on from that Al Horford, Paul Millsap era, they accepted the fact that they're going to be rebuilding and that they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league. But they were able to acquire Trae Young. They were able to acquire John Collins. And I believe we have yet to see how the Clint Capella deal works out, but that might be a great deal on their part. I don't want to give too quickly on guys like Cam Reddish and DeAndre Hunter. They got guys like Kevin Huerter. So I think they're a rebuilding team. They have a little culture. They have some direction. I respect that. So I think the Atlanta Hawks, they're actually a C team to me. I think they're a C team. The Detroit Pistons, to me, they're a team similar to the Charlotte Hornets, to me at least. They're a team that they're perennially like a 8 to 10 seed in the East. And that just annoys me, even when I'm not a fan of their team. Like, I'm annoyed for their fans because, again, they're not competing for anything. They're not getting a good draft pick to be excited about, you know, a future cornerstone. And they're just there. They're just there. So I'm going to have to put the Detroit Pistons at D. The Los Angeles Clippers, if we're doing all time, I'm gonna be honest, they're still like a C tier. But in terms of the last 2 years, I would say they're an S tier team. I would say they're an S tier team. A lot of people have already forgotten, but in 2019, how they made the most out of their parts with Lou Will, Montrez, Landry Shamet, and them boys in 2019, that was very impressive. And look, while they did blow that 3-1 lead in the playoffs in the bubble, the fact that those expectations were there, the fact that they were able to acquire Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and construct that team to have those expectations in the first place, I think is a testament to how good of a franchise they have become. So I'm going to have to give them the benefit of the doubt and put them at S. Put them at S. Now, the Boston Celtics, my team, my squad, I only wear these hats because I like certain logos, okay? But my team is still the Boston Celtics. Look, 2019, we don't talk about that year. No, I'm just saying, we can talk about that year. But again, like with the Los Angeles Clippers, the moves that the Celtics made, they weren't even bad moves. But again, the reason why they were so disappointing is because those expectations were that high. Because going into that season, Danny Ainge was viewed as a god. The fact that he got Kyrie, the fact that he got Gordon Hayward, they got injured, and guys like Terry Rozier, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown stepped up their game, and now they're coming back, and Kyrie and Hayward's healthy. They still got Horford, they still got Marcus Smart, and they got Jason Tatum, Terry Rozier, and Jaylen Brown coming back. I mean, that team had high expectations for a reason. The fact that they were able to pull off, the fact that they drafted Jaylen Brown at 3, even though most people really doubted that pick at the time. And since, I would say, 2017, they've been one of the most consistent franchises in the league. They made the Eastern Conference Finals in 2017, 2018, and 2020. And while again they haven't made the finals, I would say that level of consistency and those level of moves would garner them a S tier selection for me. Am I being biased in that? Am I being biased? I don't think so. The San Antonio Spurs, look, since that whole Kawhi debacle, I've looked at them a little differently. They aren't that consistent juggernaut that they once were in 2017. 2017 was really like the last year. And I just think they've been having a really tough time of adjusting to this new game of three-pointers, which is crazy considering how they played in the 2014 finals. And maybe it's just Greg Popovich trying to utilize his pieces to the best of their abilities, because when you have DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge on your team, you can't really shoot the lights out. So maybe it's not even Greg Popovich's fault. But as it stands right now, to me, they're like the Detroit Pistons of the West right now. And that's a tough pill to swallow for the San Antonio Spurs. I would still say they're a B team. They're just not the S tier team, the perennial S tier team that they used to be. Next up, we got the Dallas Mavericks, who had a little resurgent year last year after a couple of years of just being mediocre in the Western Conference, largely due to Luka Doncic. And if we're just looking at current franchises and how they stand right now, I would say the Dallas Mavericks are an A team. The fact that they were able to draft Luka Doncic, the fact that they were able to acquire Kristaps Porzingis, and the fact that they had that great offense that they had last year. And they're just in a great position for the future. They're a very solid team in the Western Conference with more headroom to improve. So I'm going to put them as an A tier team right there. Bloop. Now the Golden State Warriors. This is a tough one because they were literally one of the worst teams in the league last year. But as we all know, primarily the reason for that was injuries. Klay Thompson was out. Steph Curry was out. KD left. Draymond, you can't count on him to be a number one option on a team. And the Golden State Warriors last year was just a team that accepted the fact that they were going to be ass. They're going to get this high draft pick. Steph Curry's going to come back. Klay Thompson's going to come back. And now that they have this high draft pick, they become one of the most dangerous teams in the NBA again, just like that. Despite losing arguably a top 5 player in the league when healthy in Kevin Durant. Would it be too blasphemous? To say they're still a S tier franchise? Would it? Because I've never seen a team have such a bad season and then the next season everyone just expects them to be a great team again. And if anything, was praised for their bad season. Like I've never seen that. So you know what? Hot take, bro. I'm putting the Warriors at S. The Los Angeles Lakers, I mean, if you're the defending champs, you got to be a S tier team. got to be a S tier franchise. They pulled LeBron. They got AD, assembled a very, very solid team, improved a lot of people wrong. Shout out to Rob Pelinka. Shout out to, I forgot her name. Shout out to the Bus family. I forgot her name. Jeannie. Shout out to Jeannie Bus. But yeah, the Lakers, they're an S tier team right now. The Brooklyn Nets. Now, the Brooklyn Nets, I can't give them an S-tier season just because they got Kyrie and KD, because the Kyrie and KD thing, that's one of the most contentious debates in the NBA community right now, how it's actually going to play out, how good they are as a duo, how KD is going to come back. That's a big debate in the NBA community right now, so I can't give them an S-tier just for acquiring those two. But the Brooklyn Nets, if we're just keeping it a buck, they're exactly what people want the Knicks to be. The Brooklyn Nets were the one that made acquisitions to actually build a culture for their team. The Brooklyn Nets were the one that didn't rely too much on high draft picks and actually built the right way when they got D'Lo and made that little fun team that they had in 2019. That was them. That is something that people have wanted to happen for the Knicks for the last 5 years, and the Brooklyn Nets were able to do that after completing one of the worst trades in history when they traded away all those picks to the Celtics for KG and Paul Pierce. The Brooklyn Nets were the ones that acquired Kyrie and Kevin Durant when a majority of people expected the Knicks to do that. And they did suffer a lot of injuries last year, so I don't think last year was a good indication at all of what this franchise and what this team really is. But in terms of the acquisitions that they've made the past 2 years and just how they've built this franchise and the culture that they've instilled, I would say they're at least a B. I'm going to say they're a B team right now. And if things really go well next year, they can be an S tier franchise in the league. Now, the Chicago Bulls, I'm going to say they're a C tier. Because almost every single year, the past couple of years, right? They're like the Detroit Pistons and the Charlotte Hornets, who they're always competing for the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th seed, right? But they've also done a decent job of actually drafting players. They haven't drafted too many duds. They have a good young core. It's just a matter of utilizing those players the right way, them developing a little more, and just getting a culture in place there. So I would say they're on that tier with the Atlanta Hawks and the Chicago Bulls. They have a little direction. They're a bad team right now, but they know they're a rebuilding team, and they've accepted that. The Cleveland Cavaliers, I would like to put them at C, but I'm going to put them at D right now. I don't think they have enough young talent on their team to be there with the Atlanta Hawks and the Chicago Bulls, who have Zach LaVine, who have Trae Young. Their best young prospect right now is probably who? Colin Sexton. All respect to Colin Sexton. He put up numbers last year, but he's not a Trae Young. He's not a Zach LaVine. The Miami Heat, bro. Do I put him at S? Is it too quick to put him at S, or should I put him at A? I'm gonna put them at S. Just one, they made the finals last year. 2, they weren't expected to make the finals last year, yet they did. And 3, even before the playoffs started, most people didn't even expect the Heat to be as good as what they were before the playoffs. A lot of people doubted a team, but how they've developed their young core of Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Kendrick Nunn, Bam Adebayo is very commendable. It is very commendable, especially given the fact that most of the players I just named, they weren't a top player in their respective draft. They were able to maximize Jimmy Butler's talents and what he brings to a team. They have a great culture. They have one of the best coaches of all time. I will say that right now, one of the best coaches of all time in Eric Spoelstra. They have one of the best GMs in the league in Pat Riley. They are in position. And I don't think it's too hot of a take to say that they're one of the best and most competent franchises in the league. I don't think it's that far of a hot take to say that. Now, the New Orleans Pelicans, I'm debating between putting them as a B tier or as a C tier. C tier, given the fact that, look, AD wanted to leave for a reason, man. They couldn't surround that guy with a contending team for 6-7 years of his career. He wanted to leave for a reason. But in the same token, what they got in return for AD, how they got Lonzo, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart for him, how they got Zion Williamson, who has a lot of doubt right now, I would still say they have one of the brightest futures in the league. They're not as bad as the Knicks. They're not as bad as the Hornets. But I'm going to put them at C tier right now. I think they belong in that class of the Bulls and the Hawks. But they could easily be a B tier franchise, a B tier team by the end of next season. The Oklahoma City Thunder, I'm going to put them at A. Look, when you're a perennial first round exit, I can't put you at S tier, but at the same time, the Oklahoma City Thunder were not supposed to be as good as they were last season. And they got much more in return for Russell Westbrook and Paul George than most people ever thought they had. The fact that they even got Paul George to pair with Russell Westbrook after KD left was a miracle trade in itself. So I think A tier is a pretty respectable spot for them. The Orlando Magic. Look, the Orlando Magic, again, I think they're very similar to the Detroit Pistons and the Hornets, in the sense that they're always like a 7 to 10 seed in the East every year, not really doing anything special, which in the NBA might be worse than being the worst. And I think because of that, look, I'm gonna have to put them at D tier just to be consistent, but I would say out of the D tier teams I have right now, I like them the most. So they might be a C tier team, but I just can't right now. The Philadelphia 76ers, I'm gonna put them at B tier, borderline A tier, just because, look, they've been a top Eastern Conference team for the past 3 years pretty much. So, you know, it's impressive. It's impressive. And while they were able to acquire Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid through the draft, two players that are very talented, I just think as a franchise, they lack that actual team building aspect of things. Like, they're able to acquire players, which is why they're a B team. But their fit and how they make those pieces work together, I don't think they do a good enough job of doing that. So while on paper they have more talent than the Indiana Pacers, I believe the Pacers' ability to make the most of what they have puts them in that same tier. The Suns, I'm gonna have to put in C tier just for the same reasons I have the Pelicans and the Bulls and the Hawks in there. They're a team that's bad, but they know they're bad, but they still have a general direction when it comes to things. So I'm gonna put them at C. And after the bubble games where the Suns went 8-0, hopefully they can build on that and have a better season next year. But right now, I'm gonna put them at C. The Portland Trailblazers, I'm gonna put them at B tier. If they didn't have the 8th seed last season, if they weren't fighting till the last minute for the 8th seed, they might be an A tier team, because the season prior they were the 3rd seed in the Western Conference. They've been one of the most consistent franchises in the Western Conference for the better part of the decade, and they're a really fun team to watch, and they make the most out of their pieces most years. So much so that I'm thinking of actually putting them in the A tier, despite them being an 8th seed. Because I'm just thinking, if I have the Jazz in there, then why don't I have the Portland Trailblazers? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I'm gonna put them at A. I'm gonna put them at A. If you had the Blazers at B, I don't blame you, but I'm gonna put them at A. The Sacramento Kings, I'm gonna put them at C tier. They're not terribly bad. They have some good players on their team. They still have Buddy Hield. He might be leaving, but they got De'Aaron Fox. Hopefully Marvin Bagley comes back better, or just healthy in general. Hopefully they can make something out of Harry Giles. I mean, they got young players. It wasn't too long ago when they were the ones that were pegged to be the 8th seed in the Western Conference. So I'm gonna put them at C for now, but I am actually really concerned about their future in terms of their young core, with the fact that Buddy Hield might be leaving and the injuries that Marvin Bagley have. I'm a little concerned. But right now, I'm going to give them a benefit of the doubt and put them at C. The Toronto Raptors, I'm going to put them at S tier. I'm going to put them at S tier. While they didn't make the finals last year, the fact that they won 60 games after Kawhi left, still very, very impressive. They won the championship the year prior, and for the second half of this decade, they've been one of the most consistent teams in the league. And I know LeBronto, but again, the consistency is there to put them at S tier. And the Washington Wizards, D tier. D tier, at least for now. Like, I understand they have Bradley Beal, but he's not like an early 20s player. He's not a young player you can build around. I don't know what they're planning to do moving forward. Are they still trying to contend with Bradley Beal and John Wall? Maybe that's the plan. I don't know. The fact that I'm questioning their future this way, I think, is a good indication that they're a D team. But there you have it, folks. There you have it, man. All 30 teams in the league ranked. This is probably one of my longer videos on the channel, so go ahead and leave a like. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Once again, go ahead and check out the Twitch. We're about to stream Let's Keep It a Buck episode 26 tonight. And with Next Gen now, I'm about to go crazy on there, at least for the next couple of months, with 2K content. But with that being said, man, I am out. I'm out. Peace.